My name is Manuel Ortiz. I've been here at Wedgwood, I think almost 3 years. Feels like it's been only like a few months, but almost 3 years. So it's been great. Guess maybe just a little bit of background on myself. I've been doing residential work for about 6 years. So like I mentioned, 3 years here at Wedgwood and then 3 years at a different agency. And a little bit about what I do here. I supervise one of our programs here. Mm-hmm. So some of my role includes obviously working with employees, hiring, training, but I also spend a lot of time in my specific unit. So I spend time a lot with the kids that we serve, which is probably one of the best parts of my job. I could say that. Mm-hmm. And then the other big thing too is I help out in the agency as well with like trainings and all that as well. So I do quite a bit.
Okay, great. So how did you get your start in this field, and then what brought you to Wedgwood?
Sure. I guess maybe for this question, I should probably start, probably a little bit of my childhood. Mm-hmm. So for me, serving has always kind of been a thing in my life. Ever since I was very young, my mom specifically taught my brother and I how to serve. Mm-hmm. So we were born in El Salvador and lived there for about 9 years. Mm-hmm. So we used to go to this big mega church, and we used to serve during Sunday school. So my mom served in the orphanage that we had. She specifically served with kids who had like special needs. Mm-hmm. And me and my brother served in classrooms with kids who were younger than us. So ever since that moment, basically my passion just for helping people out, no matter what capacity, kind of just grew from there. And eventually, after college for a little bit, I ended up landing my first residential job. And at first I didn't necessarily know what I was getting myself into. Mm-hmm. I just kind of saw like, hey, this is a very good opportunity to make a positive impact. Mm-hmm. But looking back, at that time, I guess I never quite expected it to kind of turn into, I don't even want to call it a career, because I don't really view my job here as a career. I kind of just view it more as a passion, mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I'm here to do. I think the shorter answer, I guess, when people ask me this question is, why am I here? Usually my answer would be, I just, in my lifetime, I want to make a difference. I want to leave a legacy, for like my family, for my kids, of like servitude, mm-hmm. Serving people, serving those who really need it. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we're glad you're here. So this can be really tough work, working in residential. And what keeps you motivated and passionate about the work that you do?
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to definitely stay motivated. We see probably more struggles than, anyone else will definitely see. But the main thing, I think, is just remembering, like, why you're here. Mm-hmm. I always tell my employees when they first start, I want you guys to focus on the kids that we're serving. Now, I don't want you guys to focus on just the results, because oftentimes we may not even necessarily see, like, the full results here. We get mm-hmm. kids at different stages, of their progress, So sometimes we'll get a kid here who this is their last stop before, either going back home or going into like a new forever home. Other times we get kids here who this is kind of their first step in their journey, and improving in whatever they need to improve, So in those circumstances, we'll definitely do a lot of like the seed planting, but we sometimes don't even see like the fruit. Mm-hmm. And that could be very challenging just because we do want to stay motivated. But just remembering that we're just like one small part of their journey, and just, knowing that that is a very important step, whether it's like the first step, big step, little step, the last step, just reminding ourselves why we're here. Mm-hmm. I think it's the best way to definitely stay motivated. And I would probably say the second thing too would be, if we want to stay motivated, we also got to motivate each other, mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things I appreciate here at Wedgwood, and definitely in my team. We encourage each other. We have good days, we have bad days, but no matter what, we definitely go through those mm-hmm. Together. And it's been fun seeing us grow, in these last 3 years that I've been here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. So you mentioned this a little bit, that the kids in our residential program kind of have had some tough backgrounds, and on average, they're here for 407 days. So what sort of environment do you and your team hope to create for the kids while they are here?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first thing is my team wants to kind of eliminate the stigma that there is for residential care. Mm-hmm. I think oftentimes when people hear residential care, people think automatically like detention or something along those lines. So something that we really like to focus is just creating a very homey type of atmosphere. And that involves a few things. So that when I say home, it doesn't necessarily mean like just sit on the couch, or watch TV, but then also how we interact with the kids and how we get them to interact with each other. So for me, I have 2 daughters, and the way I treat the kids here are in ways is very similar to how I treat my daughters. I treat them with respect. I push them hard. It is my job to push them hard. I want them to get the experience of having a figure who maybe they look up to. And I always tell the kids this, the way you guys treat, male staff here it's gonna be the way you treat your dad, your brother, someone else. Same thing with like female staff, your mother, your sister, things like that. So we do that again just by having some fun with them, but at the same time pushing them. The kids know, and the kids always tell me, especially like before they leave, it's like, Mr. Manny, like, hey, thank you just for pushing me really hard. Because I always tell the kids, like those people who really care about you the most are the ones that are going to push you, the hardest. Other than that, I think just normalizing things, So at the end of the day, we serve kids, we serve teenagers. So we want to make things as normal as possible for them, So that could include, playing games outside, For some of the kids, it might be playing some sort of like complex board game, or maybe movies or video games, So just trying to normalize their stay here is just, something very important.
I love that you kind of set high expectations for them, because you wouldn't set an expectation that you wouldn't think that they could achieve. So, challenging them and pushing them, showing them that you believe that they can do it, which is such an important thing for a kid, especially here, who's gone through so much. To have someone who believes that they can do it is so important. And to have, we're in, on the podcast, you can't really see it, but we're in the coffee house, which is like a fun spot for a kid to hang out. Not at all like a detention, something a normal teenager would do, hang out at a coffee shop with their friends and, get to be a kid, which is great that you and your team make sure that is an option for them.
Yeah.
So how has working at Wedgwood impacted your faith?
Sure. So I'm in seminary, and one of the things that they always tell us is, they remind us is, we're all called to serve. We're all serving whatever calling, we are called to be, and in this case for me, my calling is helping those who are in need, So I think just knowing that is just really growing my faith out. I think the other big thing too is not only do I get to help the kids, but I also get to help my staff, grow as well. I push them. I value them. I challenge them, so that's kind of the other big thing too. But yeah, as far as like, how it's growing my faith as well. Obviously we've talked a little bit about how we handle a lot of like difficult situations here. A lot of our kids have, difficult circumstances of, why they're here and all that. And really, we get to show, the love that Jesus gives everyone, a lot of our kids, when they're interacting with me, they'll tell me like, Mr. Manny, like, hey, why are you like so nice to us? Why are you taking the time, to do this and that, like for me, and then, I simply, a lot of times I tell them like, that's just my faith, like playing out, God has been very good to me, throughout my lifetime. He's provided very great people, in my life. And now I want to do the same, like for you guys, so whether I have you guys here for a few months, whether I have you guys here, maybe a year, 2 years, I just want to be a good person, and, be a blessing to you guys as well.
Is there a kid's story in particular that has stuck with you?
There's a few. I guess I can give maybe like one example. We had a client here not too long ago, a very difficult situation. It wasn't necessarily their first residential place, but no one could really figure this client out. There were a lot of barriers with this client, some of them including not necessarily having a native language, for example. There were definitely some cognitive delays, with this client as well. So it was just really hard to communicate with this client. And then just, in reality, like if we saw like all his like steps before like coming like here, a lot of the things he did were based out of frustration, not being able to communicate. And this is one of the examples where I mentioned earlier, we plant the seeds, but we may never, necessarily see the fruits like here. So we worked through things with this client, and it was very hard. It's probably one of the most difficult cases that I've had to work with, in my career. But not myself, but also just my team, we were able to build a relationship with this client. And yeah, sometimes it was very challenging. It was very rocky, but, I pushed my staff to try to understand him. I tried to understand where, he was coming from and give him a little bit of hope. So eventually he ended up going to another place. But I still get like emails and calls, just saying like, hey, thank you for the work that you guys did, like for him, even though he's no longer here with us. He's always talking about Wedgwood. He's always talking about, all the staff, Mr. Manny, and just saying like, they treated me, like very well, so I think that's just one story that really stands out to me, just because we were able to do something that other, perhaps other placements, or other people weren't able to do.
Yeah, you took the time to figure out how to hear him.
Yep.
Oh, that's beautiful. So these kids have really tough, really heartbreaking stories. And what gives you hope that they can experience healing and success in their futures?
Sure. Well, I think that, these kids have a lot of control over their futures. A lot of times these kids are just lacking self-esteem, and motivation, and simply hope, So oftentimes I would say that that's the number one thing that we do here, just getting them to believe in themselves. So we have different residential programs to cover like different like areas. But the one common thing is we want the kids to believe in themselves, because if they have no belief, like they're not really going to improve, in whatever they need, like to improve, And oftentimes, we do have staff who have gone through similar things as well, who can be an example to, the kids here, and they can be like, hey, this staff, this adult that I really look up to went through the same things as I did, and here they are as a living example of that they can move forward, and they can have, a very, great life, and then are able to give back to, other people who perhaps might be struggling, with the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and then that's when you're challenging them to try new things and do better comes into play.
Yeah.
And you push them to believe. Oh, that's so wonderful. What is one thing about residential care that you think would surprise people?
I think there's two trains of thoughts that people get confused with residential. We already spoke a little bit about some of the stigma of like, for example, people just thinking it's like this very like harsh environment. It's really fun. Yes, we definitely have our tough moments here, but it's fun just getting to come in, hang out with the kids, just push them to try their best. So it's just a very good environment like to work in. And then you do end up getting close to the kids. You mentioned that, the average stay of a kid here is over 400 days, so you really get a decent amount of time to actually build a really strong connection and relationship, with the client, which I think is very, unique. I worked in other programs before, not here at Wedgwood, where it was definitely more like fast paced, where we may have kids, maybe 4 weeks, 5, 6 weeks, So for me, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed here. We definitely get enough time to definitely make a change, just because I think if we were to have a client, let's say for like 2 weeks, it's really hard to make an impact, in that time. So even though, we don't want the kids to be here, like that long, we do try to take advantage, of that time, so it's just like really fun as well. But I do think that there's another end of the spectrum, which this is hard. Some people do come in and think that this job, is just, all fun and games. But, you will face a lot of like difficult situations. You will be like tested. Sometimes the stories that you hear from some of our clients, might, wreck your heart. So how do you respond to that? How are you going to be there for the client without losing, your composure? So I think those are just some of the things that will surprise people. But I would definitely say for the most part, it's a very enjoyable work. And I think Wedgwood does a really good job here. I know that my team, really appreciates, and loves, working here. And we actually have a very, very strong community. So a lot of my staff, are even like hanging out outside of work, and that just shows, the strong work culture that we do have here.
Yeah. And do you think the faith element that everyone's kind of all working for the same cause and same mission plays into that?
Yeah. I think it does, just because I think, any person of faith, definitely wants to do action. We can't just have faith and then just sit back and, do nothing. There's a lot of people that need help, whether it's like residential care or whether it's something like outside of like residential, all of us, like I mentioned before, have a sense of calling, so it's just a matter of, putting it into practice, and just getting out there and share, all the blessings that each of us, have gotten. So
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. We are so blessed to have you on our team and advocating for the kids in our care. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.